So you follow now. Everyone who is now anywhere on the globe can now, from our YouTube channel, do the live streaming. So they see this screen on this YouTube channel. So it also records this one. So it becomes a presentation that is recorded onto the YouTube channel. To access it during the presentation, it needs to be public. What I normally do, I think, oh, I just put it unlisted to make sure that when I get back to it, I can tweak it and make it ready. But then people can't join the presentation. So that's a good tip. You have entered now a seminar. We have 1 hour. And I have said to most of people and tried to inform that one way of creating an ecology for network learning, like to cooperate and collaborate around the project, that is to create a Google Hangout. A Google Hangout that you create from your personal profile, that will only be a presentation that a small group has access to. But if you create a Google Hangout on air, it will actually be broadcasted and also recorded. So that's the difference. Hangouts is more like a phone call, and Hangout on air means that it's actually a broadcasted one that will be recorded afterwards. And also the Hangout on air, you can also schedule in advance so that you're ready to come back to it. My background is not very much with technology. I work as an ICT teacher, but more ICT pedagogics. And I actually studied a lot of didactics, like almost every course you can study around ICT and didactics. And I'm doing now a master's in didactics at Stockholm University. And one of those things is around network learning. So what I want you to bring with you, all the conversation, all things we're going to talk about is going to be about how a learning theory about how you learn from computer science based onto your neuroscience. So one of the ones, we're going to see them later on, is called Hebbian association. These words will confuse you and maybe think, oh, so complicated, but I like it when it's like, it's a word that describes something very well. So the Hebbian association means that people or entities, mostly people in this case, who have similar interests, they will start to connect with each other. So if you like football and you meet people when you go and watch a football game, you will start talking to them and then you start saying, oh, these are people we're having common things with. That's the Hebbian association. So that's one way that we need to use this network learning from. The other one is this fine word, contiguity. So contiguity or proximity, that means that if you have people that are on the same train every morning, it's likely that sometimes you might start talking to them. If someone who lives in northern Sweden and you live in southern Sweden, there's no really natural way for you to communicate or connect with each other unless there is an online community. So contiguity was to be close and happen to be in the right same context. And the next one is backpropagation. Now, get ready for this. So backpropagation, that is a nice term in network science about feedback. And what it is, it's like when you produce something, you always see how the people you talk to feeds it back to you. So if you're talking something and people don't understand it, they won't listen, they will leave the room. But if you talk to people and they see that that was interesting, can you explain that? Then you take that feedback and then you change your message. And that is then called backpropagation because you're adjusting it to the outcome. And this is the issue with neural networks in computers because they're not very good at backpropagation, but we are good at it. The last one now, now if you haven't been scared yet, Boltzmann is a man who looked at settling or annealing. Settling or annealing means like when you have a system, it basically comes into a certain routine of doing things. You do things every day in a certain way, and you don't really reflect over, is that the most effective way of doing it? Is this a good way of doing it or a bad way of doing it? And then what you do, you shake this system. You ask this inconvenient questions or you challenge each other. And that means normally that you develop into a more stable or more effective state. Okay, so 4 network principles are the ones we're going to look at when we do looking at Google's alternatives for creating network learning. I will also now say mostly of this material I have since I've started with this followed a professor in Canada called Stephen Downes. So Stephen Downes, when you search on Google and everything, you could see he records all his sessions. There is over, I don't know how many hours he's been recording. And he has, together with a colleague of him called George Seaman, created a theory of learning called connectivism. And it's very interesting because it basically, all the academic people say it's not a theory, it's just a method of teaching things. And it doesn't really matter, because just by challenging and saying this is a way of looking at learning, and they call it connectivism, and they're saying that in connectivism, it's the pattern of connectivity that is learning. Are you getting it? So when it's salient for the ones who are receiving it, that's when it becomes knowledge. If it's not salient, it's just a bunch of signals sent out. And that's also why it has to be a significant pattern to an external network. So my background, I am something called, in Sweden we call it lead teacher or förstelärare. And förstelärare, you get responsibility to develop different things at your school and with your organization. And my responsibility is how to use ICT in education. Now, I don't know how much you have been using Google, but you know, before Google Classroom arrived, there was something called Teacher Dashboard. Have everyone tested Teacher Dashboard? It's still available, but it's now taken over by Google Classroom. It was basically Google Classroom, but in folders and maps. So in 2012 was the first time I was working with the Google system, and we had Teacher Dashboard, where each student had their own sections. And that's when I started to say, well, this seems to be very interesting. How can we use this in a network learning situation? And at the moment, what we did then, we started Google Sites. Google Sites, we built the whole school from subjects. Students created their own portfolio on Google Sites and things like that. And then happened later on, I got to the school where I'm now, where we have Google Classroom. And at Google Classroom, I'm then this app admin, or the admin for that. So admin is the one who's controlling the apps and making sure the accounts and everything is working. So that's part of what I'm doing also. And then what we're going to look at today is Hangout on Air. So Hangout on Air is one of the things I've been developing and looking at how can we use it. It's not finished, I don't have the solution to it, but it's show what you know. And then Google Plus. And Google Plus is now, you have Google Plus profiles and you have Google Plus pages. But the best way of going now, it's the one that's called Google Plus for Business. So Google Plus for Business, that is what I call Google Plus for schools. But schools are a business. So when you create that site, you can have more accounts connected to it, more profiles. So more people can edit, post activities, create collections, and we're going to show all of these things. Next one, not to bore you too much, Master Program in Didactic Science at Stockholm University, who created this, and it's the Staffan Selander is the professor, and his subject is design for learning. So it's a very, very interesting part, like developing what is the didactic side of design for learning. And already now we're talking 2006, 2005 they started, 2006 I joined in Linköping's University something called Intercontinental Master's Program in Adult Learning and Global Change. And I think it was the name, it's just, I have to go with. And they are joining South Africa, they joined Australia, Canada, and Sweden. So 4 countries were joining the same group, and students were collaborating between the different countries to do this global change, like see what is the things changing. So that was also, to me, open up my ideas of where are we going. This is what we're going to do. First section is going to Google Hangout. I'm going to stop talking and show around a little so people who haven't even seen Google Hangout can get an idea of it. Then I'm going to talk about the network learning paradigm. This is what I was talking about, like what's the theory behind this? Why do we create a network for learning? And then a bit of advice, Google Analytics and Google Alerts. You probably already know that that's a very good way to see, are people attending? And if they are posting about it, how do you get to know what's happening? And that's very important because Google Alerts, you know, sometimes you can get posts that are maybe not complementary to your school and things like that. And then you need to be aware about it and maybe find out what's happening. Section 2, Google Plus for schools, but that's really Google Plus for businesses, and I call it for school. And then to create collections. Collections, if you haven't been on to Google Plus, the new update, it's a new update where they have created collections, which is different to communities. And then I'm going to tell a bit about self-organizing networks and complex adaptive systems. This sounds very complex, but that is backpropagation. It's basically how it feeds forward and backwards. And then a bit looking at what type of things do you stick on your website. And then in the end, questions, workshops. So now I'm going to move over to the Hangout. And the points I have been start with, it's basically to show you now so you understand this is, I can make it full screen. This is now showing what I am transmitting in this Hangout. So if I do that, I can also then say here, if you look at that one, that is this camera. So I can change who is going to be presenting in this one. And what's important is that you saw this little drop-down menu. And you could see I can mute, but I can also do here, present to everyone. So when I say present to everyone, the first one, it was me deciding to look at that person. But since I'm the one holding or hosting the Google on Air, I can say present to everyone. Now we can tilt it down, and now you are all in it. And then I say, okay, that was nice. Now we take it back and we say stop presenting. To explain what I'm doing maybe. Did you see I clicked on the little green screen here saying share screen? Then all the screens that are open are coming up. When I'm using this is in Swedish now, but it's desktop mode. So basically before I had it on my presentation. And now I'm saying, no, I go on the desktop mode, so you see the same thing. And you're going to see now how it creates like an infinity, you see here. So that's why I then create and go to this camera or something. I want to show, there's a lot of things that call apps in the Hangout. One that I recommend is the Hangout toolbar. Let's see, I get the right one here. Because in the Hangout toolbar, you have this one that is very useful. And lower third banner, you can call it. The lower third banner, and I turn that one on. That's the one. So I go here and I go on to the lower banner. Come on, I'm here. Toolbox. Yes, baby, now can. You're now starting to get the feel of what we're doing. We are in a live session. We have people who join. And it all follow this. I think I started that here. This is the most common one, where you share the link or something saying everyone who is in an email list, you just send out the link to them. Or you actually send an invitation by writing the email or the name of people. And important, when it is Google Hangout on air, you can only invite people who already have your page in their circle. So that's like a security thing to make sure that no unauthorized guests are getting into it. So you can imagine now if you go back to schools and teaching and education, by sharing your screen, which means I can then say, by the way, we were doing a presentation here. And this one was Google Hangout. On the next one, we're going to talk about this. You followed, if we start with the basic requirements, you have to have a YouTube channel. So by having a Google account, you can obviously create the YouTube films and load them to YouTube. But then with your YouTube account, you create a YouTube channel and you name it something. My idea is you name it the same as your school, if you're the admin. And advice to me is now you have set up your Google channel, you set up your Google Plus site. You can also then go to Google Maps and say, my school is located here. And then you ask them to verify it, and they're going to send you a letter home. And once you answer that code, they're going to post it on the Google Maps, which is a very good thing when people want to visit the school or find the school and things, promote it. So then you have a whole set for your school with a page located on the maps and a forum where you can communicate. You create your Google Hangout on air. I don't know if I mentioned that, but you can schedule it in advance. And then if it's a big event, you can also then promote it. Like you put a hashtag around it and you do a promotional video, and then it will say coming live within 10 hours. And then when it starts live, they can then join it, and it can get reminders and things like that. Restrictions. I said it used to be 10 participant maximum in this Hangout, and rumors, we have unconfirmed rumors saying that it's going to raise it to 20, which is logical, and that's great because it means that, as you see, this text for someone who's in a very far back is very hard to read. But if they go into the Google Hangout and maybe 2 students in one computer sit and look at the same screen, you can demonstrate things much easier way. So now, back to technology. It's going to develop, it's going to change, it's going to happen things in the next 5 years, 2 years. It's going to be a lot of things. So we have to focus on what are we going to use it for. And what's happening in the classroom most of the time is to have a star network. It means you have the teacher in the center who's sending out the information, and the students becomes receivers. They just receive content. And you know the classical thing about this. The next thing that happens is that when you do group work, you might create not some called hubs and spouts. Hubs is this, spouts are the spouts that spouts out from the hub. And they're calling this, so this is Barabasi, he's called this, a professor, and he's called that a decentralized. The first one is centralized. This is a decentralized because there's leaders and there are different work groups. But when you do this, it's very hard to get isolated, the conversation in this one. So the way to work together is actually best to create this one that's called a distributed network. So the whole point of making a group or an assignment or working on Google Plus or making a Hangout session is that the network should be decentralized. This means that the nodes have independent to each other. It's not that you have to go through someone to get to the next one. And that's one of the main series that are happening at the moment. Down here, you see it says Learn. That site are, if you go to it, you see they have uptypes to their site. But they basically are based on Stephen Downes' ideas about network learning. And they have then the Canadian Research Institute is the one who has been trying to put it into figures. And then different groups have been starting to illustrate it. And I like illustrations. This one is in a company or in a school, you have your principal, you have maybe the vice principals, and then you have the teachers, and then you have the students. Hierarchical levels, and this is the boundary that go around with your regulations, your laws, your firewalls, your policies, everything. You're protecting the children. And I know that some of you who will teach younger children, and most people saying that in younger age you should create a system that is like this, because they need to know who do I go to, what's happening. There needs to be a structure of it. If you start to create this network structure, they will be confused and not learning anything. So it's basically, these borders are important, but the idea is how can we find ways of permeating them. So the next one here is the theory of a networked learning paradigm. And then you have your teacher and your students, but then the students have access to things around themselves, which would be learning resources, it could be people, it could be different things. And I say, with my students, I would say this has already happened. Because they come to me and say, oh, I went on to Khan Academy and he said something like this. Is this the same as we talked about, or is this? Or someone is saying, oh, I have a YouTube channel that talks about this, or this resource is linked to our book. Like, you know, if you get a book, you normally get an online resource connected with it. So that's already happening. Now, this is the future idea of things. And that is that in order to create the structure, because there will be requirements within your courses, you will have your teacher or the head of the school, you will have your managers or vice principal, and the teacher then will have the network of the students around. It's not the hierarchy within the classroom, but it still structures who go to which course, what's the qualification and accreditation. And this is now one thing that is really, really interesting. It is open content. That's the first level of this change that's happening. And I think most of you agree that there is a lot of open content on the net at the moment. Open learning, that's the next level. Like you can access learning resources. Next one is open assessment. And that's where we're getting to now. Which means that regardless where you're doing your course, you can go to someone who's an accrediting body and say, can I get my diploma? You create networks, you create ways of communicating, you open up the classroom, you have these permeable boundaries. So now we're going to have this workshop again, look at Google Plus and see if we can get ideas about that. So what I'm doing now is that I'm sharing screen and I'm doing it from here and mark it and say share. There we go. And I'll go back to the Hangout and then I'll say let's go to my camera over here. I have it. There we go. So what I'm doing now, I'm broadcasting this as a speaker, and now if you don't see that, that's because I have to now, as you did here, present it to everyone. Does it turn up on your screen now? You have this picture without the menu underneath. Great. So now you're seeing, because what happened is that on this computer, for some reason, we'll go into the new version. So I've put it onto the other one, and I'm broadcasting from the other computer now. So this is the difference. You don't have the menu, and you have, now it went over to Swedish also, but here it says collections. And those are the ones I want to talk about, because here are 2 collections. So 2 collections, or whatever collections you create, they will be more like an Instagram folder, where you publish things and people can follow you and they can see what you publish, but they can't interact with your content. They can comment, they can see, not like a +1 they can do on it, but it's basically just a way of you broadcasting it. If it is a community, the groups, community one, then you can actually create things where you share materials together, and you can have them open or you can have them closed. You probably, have you seen the communities? It's like a forum, like a group in Facebook, basically. This is also so easy. Did you see what I did? I went to my own, but I didn't stop presenting. So I say stop presenting, and then I go on share screen. There we go. So the collections will have a thumbnail. Thumbnail is just to make it look nice, if it has something to do with it. And then underneath it, it comes to content, and you can post things. The last thing I want to show with this one, because you can learn much about it, and I don't time-wise, but it is that what reason that collections is getting popular is that it's easy to follow, and the next thing is that if you post things on your Google Plus site, it always comes in one big flow. So things that are not relevant for someone who just enters your school page, they're thinking, well, why does it the menu of the day the first thing you see? So then you can click on it and move into collections. Here it is. Move post to collection. So if I say post to collection, I then get an option, and then you're going to say which collection do I want to have it in, and then I only created 2. But you see, you can actually make your front, it becomes like a web page where you decide what's going to be the front side, what's going to be separated into different collections. Easier to navigate. Now, let's see if we have back to the presentation. It's behind there somewhere. There it is, I can see it. There we go. And is that the one you see on the screen now? I think we actually have to swap the one here. So what I'm doing now, I'm going here, and I'm now telling it, so as soon as I click on the green button again, it's going to see, you want to do something different, and it will stop my screencasting, and then I choose this one. So anyway, things like this, you can imagine if you do this with students, and it's always this, but this is the first time you're doing it, you get routine of it. And also it's the sound, the reason I have it on, it actually shouldn't really be needed, because you can hear me good as it is. Sound is normally if I send things from here, like a video clip and things. And I think actually what I will do, you're going to get access to this presentation, but I would like to get one of those video clips and show you here, because this is quite fascinating when you get. Let me see how the sound works. Could be loud or not loud. Say play. See that the sound works.
A half-hour time.
So plus on the sound. So now what I've done, I have from the presentation clicked on a link to something called Tube Shop. If you haven't seen that one, it's so nice because you decide this is a presentation of over an hour. But I thought here, Stephen Downes is now talking about this complex systems in a very nice way. So it's about 1 to 2 minutes. And then you can discuss what was said. So let's do.
You have to give me some slack.
See if I can get the full screen.
So how do these self-organizing networks work? Well, there are some design principles that make good ones as compared to bad ones. Now, what's a good one? What's a bad one? We talked about that. But in general, human neural networks, student educational experiences, cities, ecosystems, and anything else you want to create a network out of work better if they satisfy the following four criteria. Autonomy. The individuals in the network make their own decisions. Diversity. Being one isn't about being the same. Let me repeat. Being one isn't about being the same. Being a Valencian isn't about being the same. Being a pine tree isn't about being the same. Being a doctor isn't about being the same. Diversity, in fact, is what makes being doctors possible. Interactivity. The knowledge created by a network is created by the interaction between its members, and as we would say, is emergent from its members, and is not simply the propagation of one person's opinion to another, to another, to another, to another. Everybody contributes together to make knowledge. There's no one person out there who's the person in charge of what it is to be a Valencian. This concept is ridiculous, right? This is why when Pep says everybody has something to contribute, everybody has something to contribute, because what it means to be a Valencian is determined by the totality of activities, thoughts, expressions, being of every single person in that city. That, you take one person away, Valencia is different.
I think you get the idea of it. And as I said, you get that link and you can watch it, because I want to now show the model that gets me going also. Here we go. Now, this is based on his model and what is called this complex adaptive system. So complex adaptive system added to Stephen Down's idea. We start down here. Individuals, entities in a network, they have a niche around them. They are the most surrounding people in this, which could be a circle in Google+, your family and people you work with and things like that. They are part of a community. And the community could be the area you live in and things like that. And that's also a different set of network. And then the whole community creates an ecology, that's underneath here. So an ecology behaves very much like an ecology in nature. Like it has different connections, it has different changing all the time. And now comes the point that when we are acting in a society or learning in network learning, what is illustrated as knowledge is only a pattern. So there's signals sending out. You're trying to describe things in a way, and when you describe it in a way so it makes sense, and if you have a bit of imagination, you can see there's a Dalmatian, a dog, who's standing there. But it's a pattern. So it's a pattern of connections. When you connect the dots and see that's a dog, that's when you can see, it's a dog. And the example he takes is Richard Nixon, which is even greater because it's a person. And who don't know who Richard Nixon is, just a human person. But by knowing who he is, the pattern of his face and behavior makes sure you know what that knowledge is. And when you know the pattern, that gives feedback. This is the back propagation into the system. And it makes people act according to this. And that is when you need your Boltzmann associationist, which means when you're kneeling, you're making change, because the risk is that it creates the normal realities and it's not changing. Should we take, yeah, we finish with that one. Let's see if we go quick on this one.
This is the phenomenon of emergence. The idea here is that a pattern in the lower level is perceived as an entity in the higher level. Emergence, for example, is when you look at a video screen and see a picture of Richard Nixon. really it's just a bunch of dots. But at the higher level, it's Richard Nixon, a single node. The same relation works the other way, and the inverse of emergence is recognition. When you are at the higher level, if you are a person and you are looking at a bunch of dots, the process is one of recognition. You look at the dots and you recognize Richard Nixon.
And now I want you to think, because most of you have students when you're teaching them, and you know when you're trying to, because you have your knowledge and you try to describe things, you show them things on your screen, you connect experts with Google Hangout and everything, and then after a while it starts to emerge a pattern for the students. They say, I see what you're talking about. You use different modes, you use films, you use books, you use text, and then next time you give them a similar task, they will recognize it and say, I have now learned this pattern of mathematics or this pattern of literature studies. And the point is, like diversity, like you mentioned, is one of the biggest thing, that if you get a lot of diversity, here it is, you get easier to follow it. So the final ones now, as you say, I can talk about the series a lot, but the connection is that Google has Hangout on Air, where you can use as a pedagogical tool. There is Google Plus pages where you can create a school page with collections and updates, and a forum where you can collaborate. And the reason you do this, it shouldn't be the technology, because technology is going to change in a half a year anyway. You're going to then think about, okay, will this create something that people feel more related to the information or things happening? Like, for instance, what's the food for today? Then they think, oh, this is useful information for me, because it's something that has to do with me. Contiguity or proximate area. That means that if you want people to work together, they need to be able to get together and talk, or whatever they need to do. So it's basically, that is another thing you have to think on when you create this type of learning. And the thing is, next thing is that if you take any information, you know about use, say now they read anything on the internet, and they take the first search result and say, this is the truth. And if you do that, you don't have the back propagation. You're just taking it in and you're saying the first answer. And that's why it's so important to be critical thinking, do the back propagation, and settling, which means that if they have a set mindset, you should then challenge it. You say, well, is there another perspective? Can we see it in another way? And that's also something you can do by finding on internet resources that actually talks about it. I'm going to be here, and we do the coffee break. You can ask questions. I'm here in the admin series. You know, there's different tracks during the day. So I'm going to also be like you, learning all of this about the admin side. And then the party after, I'm there also. And tomorrow it's the admin test. Let's see how that's going to go. So welcome to just come talk to me, have questions, anything. Thank you very much. Thank you.